Welcome back to the Spin Cycle Podcast, everybody. I'm Caley Fretz, joined today by Jonny Long.
Hello, Caley.
And Kit Nicholson. Welcome, Kit.
Hello.
Today on the show, a stroll down Apology Avenue, a saunter up toward Ineos intersection, a glance over the Tour Down Under, some sort of serious cyclocross, and my friends have opinions about cycling's calendar. Let's get to it. All right, you two. We're going to kick off with cycling adjacent, right? Ineos intersection, the intersection of professional cycling and other sports. Worth talking about for a lot of reasons, though, right, Jonny?
Yes, well, I think the first thing, let's start on a light note. Caleb Ewan was spotted for the first time in Ineos kit. They did a sort of lined up, stood outside the bus. They put him next to two people much taller than he was.
It's not difficult.
So he did, not difficult, but he did still look so small. And also just weird in an Ineos kit.
Well, I was going to say, of all the signings that don't sit right in my head, like I cannot reconcile Simon Yates in yellow. But it seems
that one's terrible.
Caleb Ewan looks kind of right in Ineos kit to me.
Yeah, it makes sense a bit.
I fully agree with you. I thought you were going to go the other direction. I thought you were going to say that you couldn't get used to him in Ineos kit, but I am already used to him in Ineos kit.
I wouldn't say I'm used to it. It's more like I looked at it and it kind of pleased me. You know, right. I'm like, this will work out. I'm happy about this.
Or it'll fit the storyline.
It's very good for everybody, right?
It's very good for everybody.
Is it bad for anyone?
No. Well, there's one person that might be bad for,
who's
but
that
we'll get to that. Okay,
well, let's keep on the cycling before we get to the other bits.
Yes.
Well, poor young Martin Tisveld is feeling rather jilted by Ineos. So he's a Dutch chap who raced for DSM Firmenich, as they were called last year, and he thought he was on for a contract extension, especially having raced the Vuelta, where he helped Pavel Bittner to a stage win. And you know he's a well used workhorse, but DSM's justification was that they have a lot of them, and unfortunately Tisveld was first on the chopping block. And then he apparently had I don't know, a couple of other options on the table, but they also fell through. And then he was in talks until mid-January with Ineos, which had only 27 riders on their roster of a possible 30. So he was pretty optimistic, it seemed. But then, of course, suddenly it dried up, and they said they wanted to keep it as they were, only to then sign Caleb Ewan. So Tisveld was feeling a little bit sorry for himself, and there's a justification to it. He thought he was going to get a ride. He was feeling optimistic about it. Of course, nothing's certain until you've signed on the dotted line. It's a little bit of a shame that he was maybe told something that didn't turn out to be true.
Where is this from?
This was it was an interview he did with Wheeler Flitz. So rather, it wasn't content mining from Wheeler Flitz. It was an actual interview that they did. So he sounds like a really interesting chap. And I don't think he's had many results himself, but he's done a couple of Grand Tours, and it's a name I was aware of before this weekend. And of course, he's neither a swap for Tom Pidcock nor obviously Caleb Ewan, but Ineos could, I can't see any reason why Ineos wouldn't have wanted a Tisveld-shaped character.
Yeah, squeeze Martin in there. Come on, give him.
He's not going to want
chance.
much.
No, and it was quite cruel. I don't think it was purposefully cruel, but Rudy Kemner, who's sort of the person who oversees the riders and chops and changes for DSM, or Picnic Personnel as they're called now, he was saying we basically got like 5 other riders that are basically the same as Martin Tisveld, and because his contract was up at the end of 2024, I had to get rid of him instead of anyone else whose contract was expiring in like 2025 or 2026, which will not make Martin Tisveld feel any better, but will also then surely not make the riders who survived the cull feel very good either. It's like, oh great, so the only reason is like the chance of my contract being a different
they'll
year.
be on the phone with their agents sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I bet. Yeah,
I got an email from our friend Dan Benson this morning. 210. I mean, so did anybody subscribe to his.
I see. Okay.
not a direct one. 210 men's World Tour riders out of contract at the end of 2025,
including people like at the end of 2025. Wow,
Yeah,
that seems like that's
so.
like a whole
I will
grand
admit
tour.
I skimmed this email. I could be wrong about that, but it was a big number. A
How
whole bunch
interesting.
of riders going to be out of contract at the end of this year. So I think it's going to be an active year.
Did he say in his email what the usual number is?
That is 42% of riders. If you wanted some quick maths,
yeah, it's
there,
got
which
to be
does
more
seem
than
high.
That's
more than normal.
That's a lot of people.
So shall I get you onto the juicier, less cycling specific Ineos psychodrama from this particular weekend just gone?
Let's do it.
Okay, I'm going to start us off with some reporting from the best newsletter in the business, which is free to sign up to. I don't mind giving it a shout out. It's called Pop Bitch, which is basically just an amazing sort of celeb gossip. It's very UK focused, so bear that in mind. But I open it every Thursday. It's really good.
I'm quite proud of myself.
But everyone sign up. It's and they had a little item in there about none other than Dave Brailsford. So this was worlds colliding for me. You know, one of my favorite newsletters, and then the weird little cycling world smishing together. Turns out, you know, I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for you guys. Not really sure what Dave Brailsford's job is really now. Is like some sort of like head in the Ineos sport machine, and he gets to sit next to Jim Ratcliffe at Old Trafford instead of helping to run the cycling team. But it turns out that employees at Manchester United don't really know either. So here's the quote that's like sort of not a quote from an employee, but like a summary, because everyone's kept anonymous. So to read it out. No one's quite sure what Brailsford's really there to do, apart from say yes to anything that Sir Jim says. But he's taken to wandering around Old Trafford and Carrington, which is the Manchester United training ground, and sticking his nose into everything, explaining his appearance with the phrase, "I don't need to be here. I live in Monaco. I'm only here for you guys." Which is which sounds exactly kind of like something he would say. So that's great.
There's been a theory thrown around, which I don't adhere to, that he actually wasn't that important to Team Sky either. Which again, I don't think
that's not what people told us in that story.
Yeah, it runs counter to everything that we've heard separately. But yeah, there was sort of like there was a thread of thought running around the internet, a year, 18 months ago that, it was different folks. It was like Fran Miller, who's now at Rafa, who was helping run the ship at Sky for a while, and a bunch of the sort of folks behind the scenes.
Ellingworth,
Ellingworth, et cetera, that were actually more pivotal to that team's success. The doctors, things like that.
Ooh.
But I don't think that's valid, and but it is nonetheless funny to watch.
Yes.
It's funny to watch some of the sort of characters that we know quite well try to make their way in a sport that is like 1,000 times the size, and all the scrutiny that comes with that. It's enjoyable.
Well, speaking of scrutiny, not to be outdone by his employee Dave Brailsford, Sir Jim Ratcliffe also popped up in a video over the weekend. So last night, Manchester United played Fulham, scraped to win. That's irrelevant. No one really cares about that. But then Jim Ratcliffe was driving out of the stadium, and some Manchester United fans were filming like his car and sort of shouting at him about the ticket price increase, which I think has gone up to like £66 as the cheapest like child ticket, I think. So it's just it's outrageous, pricing. And Jim Ratcliffe's inside, probably can't really hear what they're saying, but sees like the phones, and so winds down the window and sort of says, "Oh, have a photograph, guys," like hoping that they're going to be like very happy to see him after Man United have finally won a game of football, and he like starts holding his thumb up as well to like get ready to take the selfie, and then realizes that they're just shouting like dog's abuse at him, and then like his smile just turns to a frown in an instant, and then has to like not wheel up the window obviously because he's in a very nice car, but like the motorized window just goes up a bit more.
Is he in a Grenadier?
He wasn't, unfortunately. What's
he doing?
Yeah. I thought that maybe they weren't built on purpose to get out of football stadiums and not engage with Man United fans. So that wasn't so great for our favourite pollution billionaire. And then late on Friday, after we'd already recorded last week's podcast, he's had some sort of, well, he basically dumped Ben Ainsley, who's the sailor who he's teamed up with to try and win the America's Cup. Got kind of close, like got to the final, because you have to go through all sorts of weird different competitions. It sounds as convoluted as cycling, really, sailing.
Even more niche.
And even more niche. So if what you
but
like about
with
cycling
maybe some
is
more money in some places, but yeah.
Also somehow richer.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, yeah, the semi-final before America's Cup is called like the Louis Vuitton Cup, which is just exceptional. So Ineos basically dumped Ainsley. It seemed to come kind of out of the blue for him. But the problem is that the team, the America's Cup team, is like a partnership between Ineos and Ainsley, and so now there's a whole legal dispute over who actually holds like the berth to race in the next America's Cup. So it seems like Ineos completely jumped the gun, and I don't think any of these stories would necessarily be worthy of inclusion in the podcast on its own. But the fact that you can take one single like weekend or like 72 hours and we have these 3 gems pop up just makes you feel like you can do anything, if I'm being honest. Like, just why not give like us a crack and then let them do the podcast to like kind of talk shit about us. I don't know.
I mean, the underlying sort of current here, the theme, is that Jim Ratcliffe appears to be shockingly bad at this.
Yeah. Well, it's funny.
Right?
I found an article on I can't even. I think it was called Sailing Web, and I'm not sure how legit the website is, but it was a decently written article. I think it was by a human, and they finished it off.
Sailing Web having a podcast saying the same thing. Escape Collective. Yeah, I've never heard of it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they finished off with basically what the gist being exactly what we've just been saying, that it comes at a time when Jim Ratcliffe's other sporting prospects are not doing so well, including the team formerly known as Team Sky and the football club. And it's like, it's funny how these tentacles are kind of creeping towards these other sports, and it's all just stay away. Kind of.
Do you remember having? We're not going to name the individual, but do you remember having this conversation, Jonny, with a very established cycling journalist at the Tour de France? Like, God, this must have been 2 or 3 years ago.
Yeah,
right.
That was fun.
And his point was, at that time, everything Ratcliffe touches turns to shit.
Yeah,
everything, absolutely everything he touches turns to shit. And turns out he was a little prescient.
The thing is, like, I wouldn't say I'm like the best person in the world at like dealing with people, but dealing with chemicals must be infinitely harder.
But does he
like,
do
he's
that?
Made all, but he like at some point he did. He had like he's got his degree is in like chemical engineering or whatever.
So he's more qualified than Elon Musk, is what you're saying.
So he's like super qualified, like obviously super brainy, but just somehow has portioned all of it off into just making unlimited money from putting chemicals together or whatever, and then just literally can't run like even a cycling team. Well, like that's the easiest thing to run, surely, because most of the time it doesn't matter if you win or not. You just got to like give it a good go, and everyone's going to be happy.
And particularly if you're the guy with all the money, you should be able to sort of fix problems, right?
Yeah, buy wins.
Easy. Yeah, and within a sport where you can spend 50 million and buy all the wins that you want, right? It shouldn't be that difficult. I mean, we talked on this podcast before about some of the dumb things he's doing at Manchester United, like canceling the Christmas party, and
it makes absolutely no sense.
Taking away the £50 bonus for the stewards, right? Who are like the people that try to prevent idiots from throwing things on the field, right? Like, just these tiny stupid little things, and it's clear, at least to me,
the snowballing.
He just doesn't give a damn about any of the people that actually work for him. And at some point,
which is how his business exactly.
It works fine in chemicals, it doesn't work in sports. Right. and that's the reality. Like, it creates these clearly quite caustic cultures wherever he goes that don't function well. And it's not even like, it's not a single instance. It's time after time after time after time. We're at what, 4 or 5 different sports now that he's managed to mess up. So.
T-shirt idea. Jim Ratcliffe's face. Maybe it's like melting slightly, and then the slogan underneath in like bubble writing is "Chemicals don't have feelings." What do you reckon? maybe that's a 1-of-1 purchase by me. I'd have to get someone to design it.
If the listeners want that, you need to let us know. Hit us up on Discord.
I'll print Twitter, 5 and bring them to Belgium.
All right. Well, that's where were we? We were in Ineos intersection. I think we should exit Ineos intersection at the first.
The light's gone green.
Hard right.
Yeah.
We should take a quick break, and when we come back, Apology Avenue and the Tour Down Under. Welcome back, everybody. We're not too harsh on Big Jim, right? Big cuddly Jim? No?
Until he gives us a good reason not to be. I mean, look, if the rule is punching upwards, right? He's a billionaire who probably doesn't even know or care that we exist. And so is it really hurting anyone? Probably not. And I don't think we're necessarily that far from the truth with a lot of these things. And more to the point, we've heard rumors that maybe because of our reporting last year, we've been blacklisted by the team, which is a first and kind of fun.
Recently, like a round table, like on Zoom, with a bunch of other outlets invited, and not us.
Not little old us.
Maybe we're just not cool enough.
No, we're either too cool, too mean, or too irrelevant. And I don't know which one I want to pick.
Maybe all the above.
Anyway, let's leave that behind, please. I thought we had. Let's get a quick wrap on TDU, because there's a couple other stories that we want to talk about out of the back of that. Kit, who won the Tour Down Under?
Jonathan Narvaez. And as Matt wrote in his always superb race reporting on Sunday, he the last stage was won by Sam Welsford, who had won the previous 2 pure sprint stages. Brian Coquard won more lumpy one. But yeah, so we had the best sprinter of the race finishing it off, and Jonathan Narvaez, who was clearly the best all-rounder of the race, and that's kind of what the TDU was all about. So it was a good finale. And then there was the debut the inaugural Schwalbe one-day classic for the women, and a fantastic do you guys see the celebration from Clara Caponi?
Oh no, is it worth
It's
looking
brilliant.
up?
Well, it's on the homepage. But
is it?
She basically crosses her arms and is just kind of going. It's her first win since 22.
Nice.
It's good.
It was a good sprint victory after 20 punchy laps of Adelaide. It was a good race.
The post up was like I did this while sitting on the couch.
Nice.
Hanging out.
I'm looking from the homepage. All I saw was
there's been a lot of
of
coverage, so it might have slipped down.
I thought I saw Mathieu van der Poel doing flicking his bike out over a jump in the cyclocross, and immediately I just assumed that was her because it looks like a finish line. I was like, surely that's not the celebration.
That was about lap 3 of 7, I think. He was just having fun.
Before we get to cyclocross, the one thing about the Tour Down Under that I saw someone say, and I can't remember who it was over the weekend, was the start line, despite us saying last week that, maybe some riders are not going because of various reasons, but the start line was actually fairly good in terms of there could be like an intriguing GC narrative if they maybe gave them a couple more interesting, like lumpiest or climbing stages. If you think you've got Novice, you've got Finn Fisher-Black, Oscar Onley, who looked on great form. Plapp, Jay Vine, maybe if he's still running himself back into form, but good, interesting riders. Javier Romo, yes, sure.
Who did a fantastically, kind of funny almost attack on Wollonga, at the bottom of Wollonga on Saturday.
Can we get to our apologies then?
Let's do it.
Yes, all right.
Because I have to apologize to Javier Romo.
Okay, go for it. That's
my first apology, because I think it was Friday's show. I said something to the effect of, bike grid players, keep this in mind, because no one is ever picking Javier Romo for anything.
Well, they are now.
They are now. And not only because the reason I said that is because his sort of late attack win felt pretty fluky, those happen every once in a while, but they're pretty random. But then on Wollonga, he just went nuts. He attacked super early. He managed to pretty much hold on. Was he hold on to 5th? I think it was.
Yeah, it was top 5.
So even as the sort of the biggest hitters came by him, and even given the fact that he tactically did not play it well at all, he's still on it. He's clearly a very, very good bike rider. So I owe him an apology.
Former triathlete.
I was gonna say, I think he's a former triathlete, so has the watts.
Yeah,
but I think Wollonga showed us that maybe doesn't quite have.
He did try and justify it by saying he thought that Narvaez was out the back from crosswinds, which didn't transpire to be the case, if I understand
Which
correctly.
Plapp was briefly as well.
Yeah. We also
anyway,
had a
I'm
fantastic
sorry,
sticky
Javier
bottle.
Romo.
Oh
Yeah, that was
yes,
good.
You
Juanpe
see,
Lopez.
Juanpe Lopez it was a good old fashioned infraction. It was almost quite nice to see something we haven't seen in a while.
Question though, it was off a neutral.
Yeah, it was a Shimano. It was if you watch it, somebody needs to interview the neutral service bike, because he may. I reckon it's probably just some chap who has a motorbike license who has no idea about cycling, and so he was just like, "Hey mate, do you want to ride?" He had no idea what he was doing. That's a theory presented by one of our.
Or was just terrified that because he wasn't taking the bottom, was like, "Well, I can't do anything in case I pull him off." Maybe.
So this. Now, granted, okay, so they disqualified.
Yes.
Like he's Juanpe is out. Juanpe Lopez was out. Trek put out a little statement that was like, "Yes, we agree with the jury. We're very sorry," sort of thing. However, if it was a team car, yeah, sure, like that's on purpose, right? But it was a neutral motorcycle. Isn't it the responsibility of the motorcycle dudes?
No,
he's supposed to let go of the bottle. If he holds onto the bottle, like Lopez isn't going to let go of the bottle. He wants the bottle.
True.
It looked like there was a little agreement before he grabbed hold. And there's a
that
clear
would be
acceleration, and he does, and Lopez could have let go as well.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is that Lopez is not going to let go because he wants the bottle. Like that's the whole point. He's trying to get a bottle.
No, he doesn't want the bottle. He didn't take a single sip out of that bottle, I guarantee you.
I'm just saying, there are some mitigating circumstances here. Like, yes, it all depends on sort of what was said between the two of them, and it certainly looked somewhat suspect. But
the Benny Hill soundtrack was playing in my head as they got faster and faster and faster.
But it's still the responsibility of the dude on the motorcycle to let go of the bottle when the rider has grabbed it, and that didn't happen. And you can't expect Lopez to let go of the bottle because he wants the bottle.
Well, I wonder if weird. I think if in reg, because the neutral service can be given things like yellow cards, but there's probably no point in telling him off because that's the only race he ever partakes in.
Like we need to let the Shimano neutral service guys live. Really, I'm sure they go through more than enough throughout the season.
Do we have any more apologies?
Yes, I do. I got to apologize to Mark Hershey. I saw my dad over the weekend, listened to the podcast. He said, and this was the morning that Mark Hershey won the Classica Comunitat Valenciana 1969 Grand Premio Valencia. So we need to rename
his first
that
race
at
of
some
the
point.
season. Well,
first race
the actual
season.
name is Valenciana.
Okay,
let's call it that.
Yeah. Wish they would just put that there because then
which
I get confused.
Valdeba, I think. No, not Valdeba. Called the Rats. Called the Rats. Called the Ratters.
Anyway,
training climb.
That Tade just took KOM on.
Apparently, I was slagging Mark Hershey off, I think, when I was maybe talking about when the Giro wanted him there. So I wasn't saying Mark Hershey wasn't good. I was just saying that he's not like... I think I said he was not someone I'll get out of bed for.
And he's not Alaphilippe.
And he's not Alaphilippe.
Yeah, I think that was the point. It was not Alaphilippe.
I know,
it was
a
perfect... as soon as I saw Hershey on that side, I knew he was going to win.
yeah, he loves those. He loves those races.
It was like San Sebastian. It was the same finish as San Sebastian, basically.
Start of the season, or like those Italian one days in October, and then he finished the season with like 6 victories. And you're like, oh, and Dane will be going, oh, maybe he's good, and it's like, well, he is good, but it's taking sweets off.
Well,
children,
take a note
really.
for this when he wins 2 stages at the Tour in July. You can have another apology, Jonny.
Yeah, I'll store it up. But that is all of our apologies.
Happen,
should we get to the sincere cyclocross section with Kit Nicholson? Because that happened over the weekend.
We're going to saunter off Apology Avenue and toward sincere cyclocross.
Do you reckon our it's not even geographical, is it? What is it? It's some sort of like infrastructure based.
Hey, Jonny, there's another T-shirt idea: an underground map with all our avenues and intersections.
Oh, that is a good T-shirt idea. It'd be great if we ever made any of our T-shirt ideas. They're just verbal T-shirts.
Tell us about cyclocross, Kit.
Cyclocross, yes. Well, this weekend we had the conclusion of the World Cup, which so shorter this year by 2 events, or even more because of the cancellation of the one in Italy. But so we had Mathieu van der Poel back, and it actually, when you look at speaking of apologies, we should probably apologise, or I should probably apologise to Mathieu van der Poel for suggesting that he had a big new year, because he actually did break his rib.
He did.
And he said before
maybe he broke his rib having a big. No, he didn't.
he broke it
crashing,
at a
didn't
bike
he?
race. We actually witnessed him breaking his rib.
It's on TV.
It's on TV. Yeah. But he said it was. I mean, it made me cringe slightly. He said before the race in Belgium on Saturday that he can still feel it's not quite connected, which just makes. Yeah. Anyway,
I don't like that.
So he's
I broke a rib right before Christmas.
Yeah.
Me and him.
And you had a cold at the same time, and you were dying because you couldn't breathe.
It was
I remember
deeply
you saying,
unpleasant.
"Yes,
It was deeply unpleasant. I can't really imagine racing cyclocross with it.
No, and especially as it was. Yeah. Anyway, so Mathieu van der Poel versus Wout van Aert on Saturday, and we actually got the showdown that we kind of had been waiting for, albeit for about 30 seconds. There was a few. I mean, I had to laugh a little bit at the commentators. All respect to them, but they basically they spent 5 or 10 minutes getting really excited about the fact that Wout van Aert was hanging on. In fact, more than hanging on, it seemed. But clearly Van der Poel had some gas left. And then Wout van Aert made a couple of, as he said himself, stupid mistakes. And it was all over. And then for the next 45 minutes, the commentators were saying, but it was still good.
So he fell over like a little tumble when he was coming down the descent. Like
that was his second stupid mistake.
Was the first one I read? I couldn't find a video of it. Did he actually crash into a pole?
He did. Yeah, you make
Where
a sound.
was the pole?
It was one of the fence markers. He was turning left in a kind of dog leg, and he caught his his elbow on this fence post, and then but with such force that he swung this bike. He ended up pointing in the wrong direction. So that was his first stupid mistake. But it ultimately meant that he had to do double the chasing to get, because he started on the fourth row, whereas Van der Poel was on row was at least much closer to the front. Anyway, this is far too long of a sincere. Far too sincere of a.
No, that was very sincere.
We're finding out.
I have a sincere follow-up.
Oh yeah,
we've only done a quarter of the weekend so far, but carry on. Yeah, keep asking questions.
Well, we might have to cut it off there. Kit, have you ever raced cyclocross?
No, I can't think of anything worse. No, I can't think of some things that are worse. No, every time I see especially when they have to go into the pits, like on Saturday where it was a mud fest, they have to go into the pits and swap their bike after half a lap. No.
Yeah. Every half lap. Yeah.
No, thank you. But Blanca Vass was in her element in the mud. I like to see that. So I am going to kind of try and get through a little bit more of the description.
No, I'm taking it somewhere else. I'm staying in cyclocross. I'm making a point.
Okay.
I'm doffing my cap.
Okay.
Petit chapeau to the cyclocross racers. So the reason I ask that is because we always talk about like, oh, they made a mistake and that was the end of the race, right? And that's all it takes at that level to like lose a cyclocross race is like one mistake. And I've raced cyclocross. I've raced quite a bit of cyclocross, actually. I was never particularly good at it, but I'm a good bike handler because I come from mountain biking. And I still made like 5 to 10 mistakes a lap, like per lap. You make so many mistakes. That's kind of the whole, like, amateur cyclocross is just one mistake after another. And so I think that is, to me, when I watch these races, that is the most impressive thing to me. Like, it's not the watts. It's not the speed. Yeah, that's incredible. It's the fact that they never, ever, ever mess up. Well, and so the reason I bring it up is because like when Wout van Aert has a couple sort of bobbles, and that's enough to kind of end his race. Basically, it's still just shocking to me how damn good they are.
But you make it's a great point, because I definitely did take note, I guess, because we had Mars McEllen, which is a dramatic, moody race in what used to be a mining area with those massive mining towers that they ride around, and then we had. Pardon? I said, did I say, I said Mars McEllen.
No, never
which
mind.
Isn't, did I say Holland? I was getting there.
No.
Okay.
No. I was making a very bad joke about all of Belgium being a mining area.
Okay, but whatever. Okay.
No, don't worry about it.
You've thrown Kit off now, Caley.
We lost ourselves. Keep going, Kit.
And yeah, so it was very muddy in Belgium. In what is now the only national park in Belgium. Who knew? Anyway, and then
Now we all do.
yesterday, Sunday, was the GP Adrie van der Poel at Hoogerheide. And so obviously Van der Poel won there. But what I was going to say is that because it was muddy, it was wet mud on Saturday and sticky mud on Sunday. And the number of times that, Marianne Vos fell over several times. Puck Peters did more than one face plant, literally.
Double.
And yeah, so the winners were those who just made absolutely no mistakes. Lucinda Brand yesterday, she'd already wrapped up the World Cup and she just glided over the mud. And Mathieu van der Poel obviously was absolutely flying. Lucinda Brand. So this is kind of the main thing I wanted to point out from the whole cyclocross summary today, besides the fact that Mathieu van der Poel is just a world apart. Lucinda Brand is also remarkable in that she managed to maintain this weekend her 35 race streak of podium finishes with no DNFs, no fourth place, no 11th, and absolutely, since halfway through last season, and Van der Poel hasn't done that. Wout van Aert hasn't done that. It's pretty seems pretty damn impressive to me. Yeah. And one last thing, next weekend, well, we are going to get one last showdown, even if it lasts 30 seconds. What does it matter? Wout van Aert is going to be at the World Champs, as decided this weekend. And Mathieu van der Poel said, rather ominously, he hopes to have his best cyclocross event of his life, which means that he's got more to give than he did this weekend.
Van Aert can't resist. The other of the big three, Tom Pidcock, won't be there, unfortunately. Are we still doing the big three thing? Was that everything? I kind of remember that in the back of my head.
Yeah, he was the big. He's probably still included in the big three, but there's debate as to whether he should be.
But he's off to the place of no mud and just sand. The Alula Tour, baby.
Is it coming up this weekend?
It's coming up earlier than that. It's tomorrow. It's Tuesday.
Whoa!
What the?
Oh my goodness!
They brought it forward a week.
Does that mean more photographs of that big mirror box museum place?
I think they're actually going to go with that name, Kit. And they're going to take out what was it? I can't remember what it's called before. Is it the? Oh, it's a dumb name.
Is it a museum or a hotel or what is it? I can't remember.
Was it not the Line? Was it the Line? Oh no, it looks like that, but it's not.
No, the Line is the new thing. Is the one where they're going to build a 75-mile long.
But that looks like they look like the same because they're both mirrored. But anyway, no. They might be going past that. Tom Pidcock will be doing something in Saudi Arabia.
It's Tom Pidcock's first race for Q3.
Thank you.
36.5.
Yes.
So
that's fun. The Alula Tour. I will probably watch because
there's nothing else on.
I was asleep during the tour down under. More to the point, as well as Nikola Vinokurov, one of our favourite sort of Nepo babies, lining up for the XDS Astana team, I would like to welcome a new potential Nepo baby to the fold.
Ooh.
Zach Erzen, who's riding for Bahrain Victorious, who is the son of Bahrain Victorious boss, Milan Erzen.
Would you look at that?
He may be really good. He might be really
good. Definition of Nepo baby. Right?
Yeah.
Is he good? Do we know?
He's don't know. He looks like a nice man in his pro cycling stats photo, so I will give him the benefit of the doubt. He is 19 years old. He won the GP Adria Mobile ahead of Jakub Moretsko, the Asian race Mark Cavendish, because he's won 34 stages of all the tours of China and whatever. So good luck to him. Who else is there that could be fun?
At the Alula Tour?
Fabio Jakobsen, maybe.
Fabio Jakobsen needs a revitalizing year, or
he really does.
Well, yeah, he might be on the chopping block at DSM.
He could be.
Post NL.
I could see him in some sort of Ineos Grenadiers-esque move. Not to Ineos Grenadiers, but then
I think if he doesn't find his feet this year, he'll quit. I don't.
Fabio Jakobsen, I think, will go to Astana. I'm going to call that now.
You think?
Nah, probably not.
Maybe a halfway through the year season switch because they need points.
Yes.
Anyway, this is really getting into
Well, look, the problem is this is the problem that happens. The Tour Down Under starts, you get all ready for bike season, and then kind of not nothing, but like a Lula Tour. That's what they give you as like the second course.
Yeah, and one day Spanish races, which you can't even see on TV.
Yeah, and when you've had a sort of like delicious like first little bite of the Tour Down Under, you're then like, right, I'm ready. I'm sat down at the restaurant, I've worn a shirt with a collar.
There's nothing good until.
And then they bring dry bread.
Just sand for the whole of February.
Yeah.
The course actually is pretty good. Our little micro preview here. So stage 1, probably a sprint stage. Stage 2, interesting little kicker right at the end, like quite steep kicker right at the end. Stage 3, sprint. Stage 4 has a 2.9 kilometer at 12% climb, like 9K from the finish line.
Huh.
Tom Pidcock.
Looks to me like a bike race for those out there.
Hey, who's making their debut here is mountain bike world champion Alan Hatherley.
Yeah, there you go. That's an interesting one. It seems like the kind of bike race you want to turn on,
even if it is the last 10 minutes of each stage.
Yes, I think you want to turn it on about 20 minutes from the end of each stage.
Yeah,
that's fine.
Yeah.
That's enough.
That's perfect. Yeah. Well, should we take a break here and come back and talk about why the Alula Tour shouldn't exist?
Sure.
Okay, cool.
You'd have to ask me twice.
We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So the Alula Tour shouldn't exist.
Well, it's not that it shouldn't exist. It should just be.
It should not be.
It shouldn't exist before we get a good bike race. Like, I'm fine having all the bike races that don't matter as some sort of like the NBA season up until about like February, right? Where you don't really have to pay attention. Yeah. And it can exist like that with a bunch of other races. But then I want the season to start and I want it to matter.
Yeah.
For the next few months.
So more seriously,
does Alula Tour matter?
No.
Does it matter that none of us pay attention to it?
Well, it's not even a World Tour race, right? It's a 2.1.
No, and it doesn't need eyes on it either because it's got Saudi money all over it. So
yeah, so they're not actually. There's no like normal.
It's actually relevant.
It's the.
I didn't actually set up. I didn't actually.
No, but it's an interesting debate. To be fair.
Well, but let's come back to it in just a second.
Yeah.
So here's what happened. We made a podcast last week. I can't remember, Monday, Friday. I can't remember. We were talking about the calendar. I said something to the effect of, like half these races shouldn't exist and the calendar needs to be fixed and whatever else. I have a bunch of friends in a text chat who came back at me. They listened to the podcast and they came back at me, and they had thoughts, they had opinions, and that they can roughly be summed up as, no, I like watching bike racing. I love the fact that I can watch bike racing like almost any day all season, right? There's just so many bike races out there right now. I love that, and there's nothing wrong with it. Which I see you. I see you, friends. I see your opinions. I sort of agree with them. Like, I do love the fact that you can just, wake up, boot up Tiz and pull up some random bike race on like almost any day from basically like the end of February to almost October,
yeah,
right? Like, that's pretty cool, right? But it also kind of got me thinking. And the other thing that they asked me was, okay, well, if you think the calendar's so messed up, what would you do with it? So I came up with my solution here.
Oh, okay.
Do you want to discuss?
Well, yeah. Why don't you give? Should we? Okay, let's give our like initial thoughts of like whether we agree or not, and then you can give us your revamped plan.
Okay. Whether you agree with my friends?
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't disagree with your friends at all. I think an area that we shall agree, you and I, Caley, is that what does suck about the calendar is that Vingegaard and Pogačar can avoid each other until July.
Yeah.
And in fact, they maybe feel obliged to because that's the way that the calendar provides, right? But I like your friends. I'm sure I'd like your friends too, but I, like your friends.
Questionable. Highly questionable.
I do quite enjoy finding the calendar fill up, and it's like, oh, I can switch from, if there's a sprint stage somewhere, then there's a mountain stage somewhere. Granted, that actually rarely happens because it, for some reason, and it feels like they're doing it deliberately just to spite us. If there are multiple races on at one time, they always manage to line up their TT stages and sprints. So you get a kind of formula to the races, and that kind of sucks. It's a bit boring, but I do like to have a jam-packed schedule.
You like having Tirreno and Paris-Nice on at the same time?
I don't know that that's a particularly great example because they are kind of supposed to be equally. They're races that are supposed to be equally as important, which makes little sense. But if one of them was a 2 Pro race rather than a World Tour, if it was less, because the fact that those two exist in exactly the same place is, like I said, it is encouraging a split calendar that then converges on July. Which, and I suppose there is an argument for that in that it suspends the tension, but it also, on the flip side, it does the same thing. It means that there isn't any excitement to be built because we don't base anything off what we've seen already.
You suspend the tension, and then there's never any.
Exactly. Yeah. So
it's permanently suspended.
Yeah, it's a coin with two heads. I don't know. So I don't think the solution would be to only ever have one race on at a time. But the races can't be equal. They can't be as significant as one another. And that's where, I would really like to see, and it's not just Vingegaard and Pogačar, it's the sprinters that it's like when Cav went to the Tour de France in 2021, the only thing we'd seen him do with any other significant sprinters was the Bauer's Belgium Tour. And because we had no idea what he was going to be able to do.
I guess that built tension in some way.
Well, but that was unique in its own way because it was completely out of this world.
And then he shouted at the mechanic because there was so much tension.
Yeah, it was awkward.
Jonny, what do you think?
At the moment, the way I would disagree with your friends, which I believe, is that at the moment we have a cycling calendar which is like an all-you-can-eat buffet, right? There's just everything everywhere, and like some of it's good, some of it's not, and you have to have a bit of a knack about you to know what to go for and what not. Like, probably don't touch a lot of the seafood out the all-you-can-eat buffet that has been just there all day or all week.
So any races that are on sand?
Potentially. Or like in August directly after the Tour de France, or even during the Tour de France, which otherwise could be a good bike race.
San Sebastian.
Yes.
Should be an absolutely incredible bike race.
Yes.
Like, dumbest point on the calendar I can possibly imagine.
There's nothing wrong with an all-you-can-eat buffet. Like, I've been before, they're fine. They serve a purpose.
But they see the idea of them is much better than the actual than the actual experience.
Exactly. And you'll never guess what, there's this other thing called normal restaurants where like there's a little bit more thought put into it, and like maybe a proper professional has really like crafted it and made everything flow and put that extra effort into doing a few things or a fewer things really well than just doing everything not as well as they could be done
in a bucket.
Yes, just in a pile, and then you just chuck it in your bucket and strap it to your head like a horse. So I would be in favor of a restaurant pro cycling calendar rather than all you can eat buffet cycling calendar.
So I have developed a restaurant pro cycling.
I'm just looking at it. You're insane.
You're insane.
Well, come on, let's share it with the listeners then.
So I guess what I had to say first is that this is impossible.
Yes.
so I have completely ignored the fact that we're basically talking about races from at least 3 different organizers, if not probably more actually, but 3 major ones, which would be ASO, RCS, and Flanders Classics. I'm talking about races from those 3. What I'm talking about would require them to actually work together, which at the moment does not seem all that likely, mostly ASO working with the other 2. It would also require the sort of demotion in various ways of various races, and they would not like that. It would probably also require a overall reduction in team size, which the Riders Union would have something to say about. The riders themselves would certainly have something to say about. I mean, we just mentioned earlier in the show, there's 210 something people out of contract at the end of this year. Like, if you cut the overall World Tour by a third, that's a lot of jobs lost, right? And I don't take that part lightly. So I'm ignoring all that. Basically, I'm just ignoring reality.
Yeah, fine.
Yeah, and here's my proposal. We have two sort of series, and this is not completely original. I think this was mentioned in maybe like, or a version of this was mentioned in the Rafa Roadmap ages ago, and this sort of concept has been bandied about many times. So I'm not going to pretend it's mine. We got a Classics Cup.
Okay.
Right. This is the 1 days. It runs from basically Omloop through to Roubaix. Okay. So this is not including the Ardennes. It's not including the 1 days that are sort of outside, like fully outside of that classics kind of mold, right? The classic cobbled classics. I'm including Strade Bianche in there because that race, though often won by a more Liège type rider, can be won by a classics type rider. And certainly with some small tweaks to that, it could be even more so. So anyway, Classics Cup runs Omloop, Strade, Milan-San Remo. I'm throwing E3 in there because it's like a little Flanders preview.
Yeah, sure.
Flanders and Roubaix.
So six races.
6 race series that runs from basically end of February to the beginning.
One weekend after the other.
Yep. There's I think there's maybe 1 or 2 off weekends in there, but not many.
Nice.
Then, and because, as everybody knows, this podcast loves a bit of alliteration, we've got the Grand Tour Galleon, which I couldn't think of a better one.
Rebranding. Do you work for Visma Lease a Bike?
So this is post Classics Cup. There's a bit of a break. And then we get the Vuelta in early May. It's 2 weeks long. It's 2 weeks long. Yep. Because then it's not 1,000 goddamn degrees in Spain.
And there's not snow in Italy.
And there's not snow in Italy. We're getting there. The Giro is in kind of late June, early July. So like a little bit before the current Tour de France block. Like maybe a week or two before. So there's a 2 week Grand Tour in the beginning of May. 2-3 weeks off of Grand Tour racing. I'll come back to that. Then we have the Giro. 2-3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever it is, off. And then we have the Tour de France.
The Tour de France is going to be hotter than the sun.
August, September. So this is, I haven't fully worked through this yet. I thought maybe the tour would be even later. Like you could stick it in September, October, or something like that, and make it kind of, because make it the season ender, right? I think that would make maybe some sense.
What happened to the summer holidays? It's a summer festival, isn't it?
We don't take holidays.
Well.
It's unlimited holidays, which means none.
So then you may ask, what happened to Liège, Lombardia, all these other great races, Saint Sebastian?
Yeah.
And those, because they are for the same type of rider generally as these Grand Tours, right? You pepper them in between the Grand Tours, right? So it keeps the riders kind of tuned up, and it maybe runs towards its own sort of extra series. I don't know. I couldn't quite figure that one out yet. So basically, but the concept would be, you end up with sort of a winner of the classics at the end, right? That's fun. So if you do well, you have to do well in E3 and Roubaix and Flanders and et cetera, et cetera. And then you also end up with like a winner of the Grand Tours at the end. Maybe you have to compete in the Vuelta and the Giro to even race the Tour. I don't know. But it spreads the calendar out a little bit and provides some structure. Makes pro cycling into a restaurant instead of an all you can eat buffet, to use Johnny's analogy. All right, poke holes in my idea here.
I like it. I think there probably are bits that need ironing out, which is fine. Do we think it's like physiologically possible for the Grand Tour riders to do all of that racing?
Yeah.
Okay, fine.
If they're 2 weeks, if they're 2 weeks, or even 10 days or something.
Yeah. Okay, fine. My next one is, I like the idea of the Vuelta first, then the Giro, and the Giro not being snow. My main thing that I don't like is not having the Tour in July.
Yeah, I
At
think
the
the Tour's
peak
got to
of
be in
the
the middle.
summer, and at the peak of the summer, like where you got all the kids are out of school and on the roadsides with the families, and it's just all nice. Whereas like we did do a August, like very late August, September Tour de France in 2020, and because it was COVID, there weren't fans anyway. But like the sunflowers were dead in the field, and it was kind of sad. Like you're never going to get any of those shots ever again on TV.
But isn't part of the charm of the? I mean, so I appreciate that in this idea, in this calendar, the earlier Grand Tours are kind of taking the places of things like the Dauphiné, and Tirreno and Paris-Nice. But I don't know. I mean, I feel like it. I mean, so there is some sense to this, and it's very clean, and it's I mean, you then it's like the football calendar where yes, there are races that happen. Races. See, I'm trying to use a metaphor that I'm not really qualified to make.
Do it. Go
matches. But there are okay, like 6 nations. Okay, this is my ballpark. Basically,
here we are.
So each weekend, none of the matches overlap. They might be on the same day, but they're all nicely interspersed because they know that they've got the same audience for every match. Blah 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 blah. And at the end, obviously, you know how competition works. But yeah, I feel like part of the charm of the cycling calendar is that all of these races have a different identity to them. And so the Tour de France is the pinnacle, which is the height of summer. The Vuelta is the comeback tour. It's the chance to do something with a season that's defunct. And then you've even got races, I guess like San Sebastian, where somebody who crashed out in the first week of Tour can go and do something. And I also feel like getting rid of too much sort of keeps away prevents the nourishment of cycling.
So
I'm trying to stay away from any sort of addiction metaphors because that's not good. But I think you're going to clarify that there would be smaller races that nobody cares about.
Yeah, so it's my issue is just that there are so many races called World Tour races that are not World Tour races.
Mm-hmm.
Right? They're just not. They're just not. Like you can put whatever name you want on them. I can tell you, as somebody who has worked in bike media for 15 years and has watched the traffic off the back of these races, who has stats to show you how many people gave a crap about a race report
for the Benelux Tour.
They're not World Tour races. Like the even within our sort of niche, like road racing heavy, niche of a niche audience, nobody cares. Absolutely nobody cares. Now that doesn't mean that those races shouldn't exist, right? Like they're very important actually as sort of part of the pyramid, for want of a better term. Is like that's how riders make their way up. That's how teams test things out. That's how like they're an important part of the mix. But if everything's a World Tour race, then nothing's a World Tour race, is basically what I'm saying. And so what that does is it just puts all of the power back in ASO's hands, because then truly the only thing that matters is the Tour de France. And I think that this is basically the fundamental thought behind what we're about to see with One Cycling, is that they've realized that the only way to take on ASO and the prominence of the Tour is to sort of start slowly building the prominence of other stuff by probably paring down a little bit. So yeah, like the Dauphiné maybe still exists, but it's just not a World Tour race or something.
It's also not to say that no one cares. It's just they don't care enough quantity for it to be like a headline level event. No. Like Tour of Britain, I probably care about more than the average person just because it's like in your backyard. But it doesn't mean it has to be like all the bells and whistles.
It's not nobody. But it's literally.
It's very small.
1/10. It's 1/10 of the major races, right? So the races I listed there, the 6, the 6 classics, and then the 3 Grand Tours. Like if you once you drop off of that level, the sort of fan interest is. It's a tiny portion of what it is for those races. So why are we pretending that there's all these other races that are at the same level? We should just have a legitimate second tier. Because the problem is now, we've got second tier races. We've got the Alula Tour, which is like technically a second tier race, right? And problem is that there is no sort of functional reason for any of these to sit down there, and there's not enough of them to have like a whole sort of second calendar. It doesn't make any sense right now.
It's a third tier race, but the point still stands.
Third tier, yeah. Sorry, it's 0.1.
I would like to see them revamp sprint stages, because I think they're just too long and nothing happened, but you feel like you want to watch cycling, but then you watch it and you're not treated to anything worth watching. So we should put a lot of them on a circuit, maybe put some interesting little features on the course and make them much shorter to encourage much more interesting racing. I feel like that's the main, like when we talk about like pairing the Grand Tours down to 2 weeks is quite, a lot of people not like that, because they're like, got to keep some tradition, got to be 3 weeks, but it's like, maybe we could do that, but we just make like a lot of these transfer days. And I get it works because then people pay money to have the race come to their town and stuff like that, but it can't all work like that. I've got a article I'm working on this week, which is a blueprint for what one cycling should actually look like. And the calendar's only a small part of it, but should we come back? We'll come back to that on Friday's show, maybe as an addition to this, once we've also had maybe some feedback and other thoughts from the audience.
Yeah.
Can I give one last point on Caley's calendar?
Yeah.
More alliteration. I think it takes us further into specialization, which is something we've actually kind of, well, I was going to say we've moved away from with the Pogacars of the world, but he would struggle to do any interesting things in the classics and be a Grand Tour racer. And I know that this is you know, you're aware, you're presenting us this as the kind of extreme version of,
oh yeah, it's also never going to happen.
No, that's precisely, but that's precisely my point. It's like you know, the point, the landmark at which we land somewhere in between.
I'm taking it to its kind of logical extreme, and I think that the actual probably best solution is probably somewhere quite a lot closer to what we currently have.
Yeah, and I don't know. I think what's interesting about bike racing is when somebody like Pogacar and like Evenepoel or Van Aert, Van der Poel, or in the women's side Lotte Kopecky, where they turn up at all sorts of different races and do all sorts of things, and that would get less easy to do if they are pressured into going to a smaller number of races. If you were classifying riders as a certain type of rider. I don't know.
I think Pogacar could do both. I think he could probably race most of a classic season, and in particular, if you gave them a somewhat sizable gap in between the end of that classics period, and then like if you move the Giro back a little bit, the Vuelta back a little bit, or to Johnny's point, leave the Vuelta at the end. I think Jonny said this. Okay. So like have Giro Tour, leave the Tour in July, Giro Tour, Vuelta still, but you compress them and you make the Giro and the Vuelta.
Or Vuelta Tour Giro.
Yeah, or Vuelta Tour Giro, whatever.
I mean, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, that's probably another conversation, but that's been talked about before because of the weather conditions in the comparative countries, isn't it?
But the point being that if you left 3-4 weeks gap in between between Roubaix and the next Grand Tour, the first Grand Tour, that's plenty of time because those classics are not anywhere near as sort of hard on the body either as a Grand Tour would be. So like he could turn around and do both those things.
And if say the squads become much more streamlined, where like you kind of have to enter like in the Premier League or something, right? Or not like a normal sport. I do mean that, a normal sport. Where you have to kind of play every game. You have to do everything.
Well, that's how
because then that means that endurance then becomes more of a part of it, and it's like actually if you are a rider who's great bounce back ability or resilience, then suddenly that is like your thing to counter someone who's as talented as Pogacar, that he probably is as resilient as it comes. Then it means that it becomes so much more of a lottery, and you could get someone who wins the Tour just because
I was going to say you have to make everyone care about everything, which is a hard point, but like rules. You say, Jonny, if they have to, if rules, but if there are fewer riders on each team and they have to go, then there we go.
And you can have subs and stuff, but
yeah,
something to think about. I know we talked about calendar a week or so ago, but I think it's a fun thing to return to as we're going to see stuff change as well.
The reason I did it is just because we've talked about calendar in a lot of sort of like vague terms a lot. And I was like, why don't we just we'll put a little proposal out there.
Yeah.
Again, it's impossible. It kind of takes it to its logical extreme. And I wouldn't I wouldn't actually like to see this exact version.
Yeah.
I just think that if you take it there, you start to think about what it might actually look like. Right?
It's closer than
So
what we have now to what I would like.
if you're listening to the free version, thank you so much for joining us. Consider becoming a member, escapecollective.com/member. You get all sorts of good stuff. You get 7 minutes of After Dark today. And if you are a member, keep hanging out. We're down to 6 minutes, but we're going to do it.